Okay. It's showing me that we are live streaming.
Okay.
All right. So, Hare Krishna, everybody. Yogeshwar Prabhu just lost his internet as we were trying to get the program online. So, forgive us for the delay. Hopefully, he'll be on in just a few minutes. In the meantime, I thought I would give a quick introduction to these online programs, which have been going on for a while, but we're kind of working behind the scenes to help develop this new platform for New Raman Reti specifically. If one good thing has come from this pandemic, I would say, is that it's becoming really part of people's habits to join a lot of online sanghas, lectures, etc. So we're working hard to try to develop this platform, and we hope that you will join the weekly programs that are being put up by Mother Vaishnavi and Mother Ekadashi. They're kind of the front people for this. So it looks like Yogeshwar Prabhu did get back online. You hear us?
Yeah, I hear you fine.
Okay, great. So we'll get started, and it's my pleasure to introduce Yogeshwar Prabhu, also known as Joshua Green, who after 13 years in temples and ashrams of Europe and India, returned to New York, where he taught Hinduism and Holocaust history at Hofstra University until retiring in 2013. And today he lectures on journeys to enlightenment at universities and yoga studios nationwide. He is also engaged as a public speaker on several other platforms, such as the Bar Association and his popular podcast, Gita Wisdom, where he explores subjects such as what is a soul and what does it mean to be a modern day yogi. How does yoga connect with current day issues? His yoga-related books include Here Comes the Sun, The Spiritual and Musical Journey of George Harrison, Swami in a Strange Land, How Krishna came to the West, a biography of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and also his small book, Gita Wisdom, which is an introduction to India's essential yoga text, the Bhagavad Gita. He is still active in some exciting upcoming book projects, but I don't know if I should give the info on that just yet, but I'm looking forward to the new books coming up. He's held many positions of service within ISKCON, being involved as a temple president in Philadelphia back in the day. He's done a lot of work with mediation and has been a board member for different entities, including the TOVP, the Temple of the Vedic Planetarium in Mayapur. Of course, he's spent a lot of time with Srila Prabhupada, the founder of the Hare Krishna movement, and he's derived a lot of lessons from his personal association with him. So I'm sure he'll be sharing some of that with us this evening. On a personal note, I'm very lucky and grateful to say that I get to have him as a father. And it's been, you've been an amazing reference point for me of what it means to be a truly incredible human being and how to practice Krishna consciousness beyond the rituals and the rules and regulations. And I really look up to you, and I'd do it again if we had to go for another lifetime, you and I.
Wow,
So,
get much better than that.
Today we are addressing the topic of ISKCON and the greater world, a topic that I know you've been pretty passionate about recently. And I think it's going to be very relevant for us here at New Raman Reti, which is the largest devotee community in North America, and where so many new generations of devotees are born, or a lot of families move to attend the devotee schools here. So I'm hoping that you can help us and the next generations understand why social engagement is important on one's spiritual path, and how we can contribute our particular skills and inclinations in service to the world as part of our bhakti or spiritual path. So Papa, the mic is yours.
Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Well, I thank you so much for this opportunity to speak with you all this evening. I'm particularly pleased to be addressing the Alachua community, not only because my family is there, my son and his wife and their wonderful daughter, Radhika, but also because I have so many friends. You know, us first generation devotees, we're a little special. You know, we're sometimes misunderstood, I think, by the younger generations. Having had Prabhupada's association and having been there in the pioneer years, tends to color our perspective on things. But it also heightens the appreciation we have for association, particularly with devotees of our own generation. So my obeisances go out to Mother Mukhya and to Ambarish Prabhu and to Vaishnavi, all of you, so much my thanks to you all. And to the many people, too numerous to mention, who deserve credit for having built New Raman Reti from the ground floor up to becoming the largest community in North America for Krishna consciousness. And having spent a lot of time there, I know how wonderful it is and what a challenge it is as well to grow a community that is as diverse as yours. The bigger the community, the greater the variety of perspectives, the greater the number of opinions, the greater the potential for divergent, sometimes even conflicting or contradictory points of views on things. And that can be stressful, but it's also an opportunity to examine how different perspectives interact and how sometimes those conflicting energies can be more productive than when everything is uniform and all the same. I remember one example of this. One of my godbrothers from the old days was having problems cooperating with other members of the GBC. And he wrote a letter to Srila Prabhupada saying, I don't know if I can continue working with this group. There are so many, the imperfections just keep coming out all the time, and I don't think there's any reconciling for me. Srila Prabhupada wrote him back and said that you may have misunderstood an important point of Krishna conscious philosophy. And that is that it is our imperfections that make us each unique and lovable. He said there are imperfections even in the spiritual world. It's just that they're all sublime. And he gave examples. He said one time Krishna was so distracted looking at Radharani that he tried to milk a bull. And the gopis became so distracted hearing the sound of Krishna's flute that they put their saris on upside down. So there may be imperfections even in the spiritual world, but because they're all in connection with Krishna, there's something sublime about them. And the Vaishnav attitude is one of acknowledging each other with gratitude for each individual's effort to bring service to the greater community. And even if there are some differences of opinion, to be able to overlook the defects and express appreciation for the good. Now, I'm specifically opening with this because I want to admit something to you, and that is I have a real problem with that. I've had a problem with that for some time now. What do I mean by saying I have a problem with that? Well, what I mean is that when we consider this very challenging issue, ISKCON and the greater world, what Krishna consciousness is in the future may not look like what it has been in the past. Clearly, the basics will still be there. That's for certain. The basics have to be there. That's the foundation of our theology. It's the foundation of our tradition. The chanting of 16 rounds, the following of the regulative principles, Sankirtan, Prasadam, deity worship, all those things have to be there. Those are the pillars upon which our entire society is built. And if we do not follow the basics, there's no question of expanding. At some point, things will collapse. If, on the other hand, the only thing we do is follow the basics, then we will have misunderstood the purpose of Srila Prabhupada's mission. Srila Prabhupada came to the West and performed miracles by transforming people with zero qualifications into devotees of the Lord. That in and of itself is a testament to his divinity, that he was able to make that kind of a transformation. But he expected something from us in return. He expected that we would take his mission even farther than he himself was capable of doing in the 12 years that he was here, from 1965 when he arrived in New York until he passed away in 1977. He expected us to use our intelligence and our God-given skills and abilities to expand the impact and the penetration of bhakti culture into the larger world. So the challenge for us is to envision what that future of Krishna consciousness will look like and determine what is our place in that future. That's a huge, huge challenge. And it's one that we're only beginning to embrace and examine. I'm a New Yorker, and most of my life has been spent chronicling other people's journey to a more enlightened life. Specifically in the field of Holocaust studies, where I've been called upon to write perhaps a dozen biographies of Holocaust survivors, and books on war crimes trials, and documentary films on witness testimony. That is to say, the experiences of people who survived the Holocaust, describing what they've seen and what they went through in their own words. It's a very, very powerful form of coming closer to an impossible to imagine experience. When you hear the words of the people who were there, that is the closest we have to a window into an unimaginable time in human history. So I think perhaps part of the benefit of this series that the Alachua community is scheduling is a chance to hear from someone like myself and give us an opportunity to share with you some of our reflections, having been witnesses to that first generation of Krishna consciousness. I will admit to you that there are times when the memories I have of the days and weeks and months that I spent with Srila Prabhupada have kept me alive. When life seemed darkest over these last 50 years since his departure, those memories have sustained me. And it's from those memories that I derive whatever little bit of insight that I can offer to you about this very big topic of ISKCON and the larger world. The first thing I think to say is that in my generation, ISKCON was the larger world. The world around us was the smaller world. And we really did believe that it would go on and on. And when Srila Prabhupada disappeared, it was a great shock. And the fact that his movement has continued to grow since then is proof positive that no matter how dedicated we were to messing up what he had done, he invested in his institution a self-correcting mechanism. No matter how far off track we went, there was something within the dynamic of cooperation among devotees that brought things back to center track. We're seeing that in so many ways. We've had to make amends for great transgressions and failings of the past. But I don't want to dwell on that. What I do want to talk about is how things could be different in the future and how the challenge for each of us here on this conversation is to envision what our role will be in that future unfolding of Krishna consciousness. Let me give you a few examples, if I may. My dear son, whom I love and admire so deeply, mentioned earlier this book, Swami in a Strange Land. This is a little self-serving that I should be reading from my own book. A more appropriate thing to do would be to read from Srila Prabhupada's books. But since this was intended to glorify him and his mission, I hope you will bear with me.
We couldn't see the book clearly.
Oh.
Little back.
Little back. Is that better?
Yeah.
Oh. All right. I want to give you an example of some devotees who have been incorporating Krishna consciousness in ways that are unusual and different and perhaps unfamiliar to you in terms of your own experiences. Krishna consciousness, God realization, is an active proposition. We see examples in devotee organized projects such as midday meals, a food relief effort organized by Radhanath Swami out of Mumbai and his temple there in India, that serves fresh prasadam lunches to more than 1 million indigent children, school children across India every day. Devotee doctors operate mobile hospitals and offer cost-free cataract surgeries in remote villages. We see Prabhupada's style of engaged devotional service in the programs of hospice caregivers. Here, I live on Long Island, and each week we have on Tuesday evenings, we have a discussion group called Gita Wisdom. And by the way, if you're interested in the programs, you can go to gitawisdom.org/events, is it? /events? Events. You'll see them there. Our guest a couple of weeks back was Kamala Radha, who is an end-of-life caregiver. Doula is the official title. She's been working in hospice care for many years. It was an absolutely fascinating discussion about what it's like to care for people who are approaching that moment of transition, when they're about to die. How, as Vaishnavas, do we approach that offering of service in a way that might be somewhat different than others? I don't know how many of you are out there. If I can see by a show of hands, how many of you are dealing right now with an elderly person, one or more elderly people? All right, well, I see quite a number of hands going up.
I guess I better not raise my hand.
You do, and you're in trouble. But this is a very important, very practical, and very real skill that generally is not taught in a Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam class. So that's the kind of experience that we're talking about in terms of the expansion of Krishna conscious devotional service. I spoke, in researching this biography, I spoke with a lawyer whose service on behalf of Native Americans was inspired by reading Srila Prabhupada's edition of the Bhagavad Gita. I interviewed a government officer who serves as a track 2 diplomat, a negotiator operating behind the scenes in areas of armed conflict. She credits her effectiveness in mediation to bhakti guidelines for nishkamya karma, or unselfish action. Another follower of the bhakti path runs one of the world's most renowned wildlife shelters. I spent quite a lot of time in South Carolina with this particular friend. His inspiration comes from a verse in the Bhagavad Gita that speaks of seeing all life, human and other than human form, as equal. This is a wildlife preserve where rare and endangered species, more than 1,000, are housed and kept with great care and affection. One of the most memorable examples of Prabhupada's mission in action came in the form of an email that I received back in 2008. This comes from a soldier who was serving in Baghdad. He wrote, "One of my buddies died in my arms. We had been practicing yoga together for some time, and he was chanting when he expired. That gave him and me both some solace. I made the best of the situation by teaching yoga to the men and women on my team." War had been as difficult for this devotee as it had been for everyone else in his unit. He said, quote, "We've been hit with a lot of IEDs, improvised explosive devices. I took a round and lost some hearing, and I'm only 5 months in. There was a massive casualty event recently. This was after several suicide attacks in the north. And I credit the Gita with giving me enough strength to lead my team through that. In this one town," he continued, "we had to treat more than 60 men, women, and children. Really gruesome material world stuff. There's nothing more sobering than having to put some little child's brains back in her head while speaking soothing words before she dies. I carried sacred objects with me from India, and I showed them to her and told her stories. She smiled before she left her body. It's such a powerful thing, this process of bhakti yoga. How special this life is, how hard it gets, and there's always something you can do, even here." Now that realization, by the way, here's an offer. If anyone would like a copy of this biography of Srila Prabhupada, I'm willing to send it to you as a gift. Go to media.gitawisdom.org, send us your name and address. I'm happy to send it to you. If you'd like to send a donation back to cover costs, you're most welcome to. If that's difficult for you, you're welcome to have the book with my compliments.
You realize you're speaking to the largest devotee community in North America?
You're realizing you're the guy who's going to have to help me pay for this? Oh, it's an email address? Media at, oh, my mistake, media@gitawisdom.org. Send me your address and we'll send you out a copy of this biography of Srila Prabhupada. So the more time passes, the more we will find that Krishna consciousness expands out and penetrates many different areas of human activity that we haven't even begun to penetrate. There are some inroads. I've met a lot in healthcare, for example. I've met a lot of devotee physicians around the world. And there's a real move now to create a consortium of devotee physicians so that we can invest in healthcare, this additional dimension, this unique contribution of Krishna consciousness, that is to treat each individual not as the victim of disease, the victim of an accident, the victim of some kind of genetic condition, but as a divine being, an eternal spark of God entitled to our affection, our respect, and our care. That change of mood by treating someone not as a casualty, but as a divine person is as important to the healing process as pharmacology. We're also seeing this expansion into new areas of devotional service, for example, in the legal field. My dear godbrother, Guru Gauranga, another long in the tooth old timer like me, who had been president of the Geneva Temple and has an extraordinary career as a lawyer, organized recently a legal gathering of devotee lawyers from around the world. It was there in Gainesville. Some of you may have attended or are aware of that gathering that took place some months back. Imagine, if you will, a world in which there are affiliations of lawyers, Vaishnava lawyers, associations of Vaishnava healthcare physicians, unions of Vaishnava social workers, a network of Vaishnava financial consultants, a community of Vaishnava educators. You can continue to fill in the blanks on your own here. What an amazing world that would be. So my challenge in my own life, and what I would share with you as a challenge in your life as well, is to consider very carefully what is our role moving forward. Each of us in our own way has a community of influence. We have people we know, we have a sphere of activity, even under these very trying pandemic conditions. We're still in contact with one another. We still have an influence over a certain, however modest, community of others, friends, family, colleagues, and so on. I believe that our challenge now is to identify what is the unique contribution that we can bring to our area of human activity that will raise that area of activity through the amazing philosophy that Srila Prabhupada has brought us. I'll give you an example, since I'm called upon to speak before legal communities myself. I don't have any formal legal degrees, but because my research has included war crimes trials and international tribunals, I'm sometimes asked to speak about principles of international law and the proceedings that took place at the end of World War II. When I speak before bar associations, gatherings of lawyers, judges, law professors, and others, inevitably, the warmest response is reserved for that time when I speak about something very different from what they were expecting. I'll give you an example of what that's like. After the presentation about the Dachau war crimes trials, for example, that took place south of Nuremberg, I always wait for this question. Professor Green.
What if I'm not a professor? Professor Green, what have you learned from your study of these tribunals
after World War II that can inform the work that we're doing in international criminal law today? Here's the response that I've learned to develop as a way of introducing Krishna consciousness into the legal field. My dear sir or madam, I'll answer your question, but in a somewhat oblique manner. If you tell me how you define a human being, I'll be able to tell you something about how you practice law. If for you, a human being is nothing other than the organic molecular doer of actions and therefore responsible for the consequences of breaches of legal parameters, then let's just find a punishment to fit the crime and go home and be done with it. And if we are feeling a little bit self-righteous about it, let's waterboard this person until they submit to a coerced confession, and then we'll punish them. If, on the other hand, you define a human being as something more, if you leave room in the scope of how you see human beings for something transcendent, something more than just collections of biological molecules and thought patterns in the brain, if you allow room that says all life, just by virtue of being alive, people are entitled to certain rights and privileges, then maybe your attitude toward capital punishment will change. Maybe your attitude toward the justice system in general will change, and we'll find ourselves moving away from a punitive form of justice toward a more restorative and reformative form of justice. Maybe a lot of things would change if you saw life as a divine spark and not just matter. I have to tell you, and at first I was very scared to do that. I really thought I might have been jeopardizing my career by going there. The response has been so warm. It's been so wonderful. People come up and say, you know, we never get to talk about these things. That was so important what you said. Can you describe more? Where does it come from? What's the background? And before you know it, I'm able to introduce Bhagavad Gita, I'm introduce yoga, things that might not otherwise make their way into a continuing legal education seminar. My conviction is that we can do that in every field of activity, areas of poverty, areas of human rights abuse, protecting the rights of women, of children, areas of environmental danger, armed conflict, you name it. And I, for one, am thrilled when I see, as I did recently here in New York, some, not many, but some devotees joining the protesters in the streets to voice their objection to police brutality and systematic institutional racism in American culture. I believe that when we speak up against wrong, not from a place of bitterness or hatred or retribution, but from a place of love, that's how we transform the voice of protest from a material act into a spiritual act. And I think we can do that in every sphere of life. So there you have some of my thoughts on ISKCON and the greater world. It's an exciting time. It's a challenging time. And I would have to say that my perspectives have been formed from having known Srila Prabhupada and having spent time with him personally. That was my great privilege. That's the great treasure of my life, is that I know that Krishna is real because I saw Srila Prabhupada's love for him. And through that love for Krishna, I saw Prabhupada's love for every human being, every animal, every plant, every tree. And it was so inspiring that I'll go to my grave doing whatever I can to help him in his mission. So I thank you for this chance to speak with you and answer them to the best of my ability. Hare Krishna.
Could you repeat what you said as a last sentence, because we didn't hear that clearly? Something went wrong.
Just that I have Srila Prabhupada to thank for giving my life meaning, and I will do my best to continue serving him and encourage others also to push the envelope, to go farther, go beyond what you think your limits are. That's the beauty of Krishna consciousness, is we're tapped into the source of all energy. We can do so much more than we imagine ourselves capable of doing. That was the whole message of the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna was encouraging Arjuna at a time when he thought, I've reached my limit. I can't do any more. That's it. I'm done. Krishna said, no, you're not. Just allow me into your life, and we'll do this together. So if there are some questions or thoughts, I'd be happy to hear them. Are you able to monitor if there are questions coming in?
Yes, I am noticing, but there is no questions so far yet.
Okay. And I can always tell some Prabhupada stories. I know people love Prabhupada stories.
Oh, definitely.
So
I'll share my appreciation first for what you shared, and I really do like that that example you gave of engaged bhakti in the field of justice and law, and how, you know, just having a total shift, a paradigm shift, could bring so many results for that specific field. And like you said, bring more of a reformative approach based on the understanding of, you know, the eternal self, rather than a punitive form. It brought up a question for me, which I run into in my field of activity, and where I try to engage my bhakti outside of the temple and then outside of my personal practice, and that's at my job as an airline pilot. And I often have really nice opportunities to discuss spirituality and share whatever my experiences have been and learn from other faiths as well. But one thing that's come up for me sometimes is, let's say when we're trying to approach, say, the political field, at some point it feels like you have to give room for people to, you know, have an atheistic approach to life, if that's what they truly believe in, or an agnostic or whatever. And I think that's where the whole separation of church and state comes in. So is that an obstacle at some point where we can't really engage as far as we would like to, because we have to respect that? Or would you say there's a way to still be engaged on this bhakti path in these situations through other means, whether it's just doing, you know, charitable work and not trying to impose a specific religious or spiritual view as far as, you know, you're not the body and things like that?
yeah, well, you're asking one of the seminal grand questions when we talk about ISKCON and the greater world. There will always be a small community of people already predisposed to devotional life, who are somehow maybe picking up from a previous life where they're already engaged in devotional service, or they practiced yoga wherever they did. And just by connecting with Krishna consciousness, hearing the holy names, meeting devotees, visiting a temple, boom, they're there. They're back in action. those people are very fortunate, and how wonderful that they are there and that we can serve them. But maybe like yourself, my heart goes out to the much vaster number of people in the world who will never visit a temple on their own initiative. They have zero interest in going to what they perceive to be a place of Hindu worship. No interest at all. Who perhaps are even antithetical, because for them, religion has been the source of the problem. Religion's not a solution, it's the problem. People rejecting science. You got to remember the times we're in right now. We're in a state historically where the government authorities are rejecting science. They're rejecting the findings of science. And as a consequence, the impact of the COVID virus is spreading at a much faster rate than it might have otherwise. People sometimes conflate religion with that notion of the rejection of science. So we have that strike against us because people perceive that as believers in God, we are probably de facto not interested in science. So that's a suspicion that we have to somehow deal with. And look, there's a simple answer to your question. Let me give you the simple answer. The simple answer is philosophy is very nice. I don't think philosophy convinces anybody of much of anything. What convinces people is when they meet somebody they like. If you're a likable person and people enjoy spending time with you, eventually the conversation is going to come up of its own accord. You're not going to have to force the issue. It'll be very easy. It'll be very simple. What is good preaching? Good preaching is to be somebody's friend. That's great preaching. And what does it mean to be a good friend? It means to be concerned about them. You will never go wrong asking somebody, as you yourself have discovered with flying with, pilots whom you may not know, if you just express interest in them, in their life, they'll open wide up. People love talking about themselves. If you're good at that, and Prabhupada was wonderful at that. I can recall times when people would come to visit Srila Prabhupada and they'd say, where are you from? Is your family here? Start off with the most off-point topics. There was a man who came to see Srila Prabhupada from the International Labor Organization in Geneva. It was a branch of the United Nations that was established after World War II in an attempt to put into place safeguards for safe workplace conditions. But they also deal with international labor relations. So I described for Srila Prabhupada who this person was who was coming to see him and what his job was all about. The man walks in, offers his greetings to Srila Prabhupada. The first thing Srila Prabhupada says to him is, people want the best goods at the best price. So why should there not be free trade? I'm thinking, wait a minute, what just happened? What did Srila Prabhupada just say? I'll say it again because I nearly fell off my cushion. He said, people want the best things at the best price. Therefore, why should there be free trade? Why should there not be free trade? Why should there be tariffs? This was long before the international tariffs debate that's going on right now. This is front page news, okay? Srila Prabhupada was advocating for free international trade. If someone can make something good in this place, why should there not be exchange of goods from other places? Everyone has something to barter, something to exchange. And of course, ultimately his point was that we are all children of God. We are living on the same one planet. And we have the equal right to share in the bounty of God's creation. That's where he was going with it. But where he started, that's just a mind blower. He's talking about international tariffs. We're, wow, But he knew how to do that. And it really did open the door. I remember a time, I think you know this story, when Donovan, remember the singer Donovan from the 60s? They call it Mellow Yellow. Remember him?
No, I wasn't born.
That's right. You were in your last lifetime still.
Mother Vegavati remembers.
Right. All us old fogey. Hey, Vegavati, remember? They call it Mellow Yellow. Quite rightly. So Donovan came at George Harrison's suggestion to visit Prabhupada at the Bhaktivedanta Manor. So he comes in with his bass player and their girlfriends. So the first thing that happens is Donovan and his girlfriend sit down in front of Srila Prabhupada at this low desk, and she's got on this miniskirt that's so mini, it's like not even there. It's like she's not even wearing. So Prabhupada looks at me and he says, put your chadar. So I took off my chadar to cover up her legs really quickly, and then so Donovan is just staring at you. He's like staring at Prabhupada like this. You've never seen, wow. And Prabhupada is staring back at him. They're staring at each other. And then finally, Prabhupada goes like this. He was thinking about how to open the discussion. He goes, Then he quoted a verse from the, I think the Yajurveda. He said, this verse from the Vedas says, music is the highest form of education. Therefore, you should do like your friend George Harrison. I will give you the subject and you can write the songs. So right there in the space of 30 seconds, he made a connection with Donovan on the platform of music and gave him a life's mission. I mean, I was saying, my God, this is like Prabhupada meeting Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and getting, in the first 30 seconds, just getting a life's mission here is amazing. So it's just to say that he was a master at knowing how to establish a rapport with someone. So what's good preaching? Good preaching is to be someone's friend. Whether they're a theist or an atheist or an agnostic or whatever, what does it matter? We're all human beings. We all have the same interests, the same vulnerabilities, the same desires, the same yearnings in our heart for an unending love. I think ultimately what Prabhupada was doing is creating a whole army of lovers, an army of people to go out and just love everybody. Because that's what's missing. It's what's most scarce in this world. My main concern during this pandemic, I have to tell you, even more than the virus itself, is the isolation for people. People living alone and thinking, if I were to die, nobody would care. That I've lived this life and it doesn't matter to anybody. I think that despair is as deadly a threat as the virus itself. And we have the power to turn that around. That's what an amazing gift Srila Prabhupada has given us, to be able to go out in the world and just be people's friends and let them know that we care for them. It's an amazing, amazing opportunity. So I hope that gives you something useful.
Yes, I really appreciate that answer. And I agree that can really bridge all gaps, religious or any other. And in my experience, even though I know that's the key, I can see this is a life's work to be able to develop not only that passion and love for other people, but also the language and just the ability, the expertise of connecting with another person. It's really not that easy. And I really agree that, you know, it's one of the top practices, qualities of a devotee to develop that ability. So thank you for that answer. I had an idea, if, of course, I hope there might be some other questions, but if not, and I don't know, I guess we don't have so much time left, but perhaps those who are on the Zoom call could share some ways that they have engaged their bhakti in some of these platforms that you have described, you know, that may not be the typical outreach, kind of religious outreach that is important, but, you know, we're talking about how do we expand to the greater world outside of just the temple. So I'd love to hear some personal examples if there are some. I know Sundari back there, she does it in many ways. She's going to be mad at me for mentioning her though.
Yes, Mataji, Vegavati, go ahead. You need to unmute yourself.
Okay. Yeah, no, what I thought of, Yogeshwar Prabhu, when you were speaking was a conversation I had with my father one day. You know, obviously he knew I'm a devotee. He was agnostic, having turned away from his parents' religion. So he knew I had a spiritual master. And just in a conversation one day, I told him, a devotee asked Srila Prabhupada, asked my spiritual master one day, is it true what they say that cleanliness is next to godliness? And I told him that Srila Prabhupada had said, cleanliness is godliness. And my father just loved it. And I thought he loved something that Prabhupada said. So that's good for him.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. No, that was the perfect answer. That was the right way. That's what it is, isn't it? It's finding the point of tangency. Everybody has some point of tangency with spiritual life. It's our job to find it. Thank you for sharing that story.
Yes, Mataji. Dushala, did you want to say something?
Okay. Yeah. Hare Krishna. Thank you for speaking and sharing with us and everyone here. I'm Dushala, and I'm taking care of my 93-year-old father with help of my sister. And so one week I brought the Saragrahi Vaishnav poem by Bhaktivinoda Thakur with me. And so I told my dad, I'm trying to memorize this. So I handed it to him, and I was trying to recite it. And when I would stumble, then he would read it out loud. And it was just fantastic. It's, you know, he's getting up there and he needs to hear these things. So, and also on my own, what I'm doing right now is, I'm a teacher, but what I'm doing in my own time is writing a book, and it's a novel. So, and it's going to be set, it is set mostly in Europe, in Holland, the Netherlands in the 1970s. So I am already getting some elements of course, people live right there, right after the Holocaust, you know, so I have some elements of that in there, but there's a lot of devotional, you know, it's very more subtle, but it's a lot of fun, but I think it can be really good. So I'm excited I'm doing that.
Best of luck with that. Yeah. Writing a book is very hard work, so I wish you all success with it. I empathize with what you're doing with your father. My mom is 94. And what I do sometimes, and she appreciates it because she likes to keep her head active, I'll call her before I give a class and I'll ask her what she thinks I should talk about. I'll explain. So here's the verse from the Bhagavad Gita, Mom. This is what I've been asked to talk about. And I'll read her the verse and I'll say, so I want to make this real for people. Do you have any ideas, you know, of how does this connect for you? I mean, from your own life experiences, how does this idea of, you know, selfless service or acting with detachment or whatever the verse might be, how does this resonate for you? And she'll always come up with something actually very useful. So I have to give her credit. If I say something that's interesting in class, it's usually my mom who's giving me the right idea for it. So, but yeah, coming up with ways like that to keep seniors engaged is a great skill. Great skill. So thank you for that.
So Nandini Kishori, do you have anything to say?
I think Sundari was going to share something.
Yes, please, Sundari.
She's just trying to get her phone activated.
Hi, Bo.
Hey, Bo.
I wanted to say that what really resonated with me was focusing on relationships and becoming a likable person, because I think that I'm not a big preacher. That's maybe not the biggest goal in my life, but my goal is to bring something more to this world with me than just my own happiness, you know? And a couple of examples that I can give of Namamrita and I that we've experienced that has introduced Krishna consciousness into somebody's life that might not have before were our neighbors that we had in Savannah. We lived there for 7 years, and it was a really beautiful little dirt road that we lived on. And we had some wonderful neighbors who really brought us into their lives. And it was not a goal of Namamrita or I that we turn them into devotees, but we developed these really wonderful relationships with them. And they would come to our programs, and I'm talking about like Bible Belt, really Southern, you know, people who might have and had never heard of Krishna before. And they were in kirtans happily, without feeling any strangeness, without us forcing anything on them. And it was joyful to share something with people that we loved and that loved us, without it becoming an aggressive thing or, you know, like we're known for airports and stuff. So it's just, that definitely speaks to me greatly. Yeah. And another example that I wanted to share was when Radhika was born, she had a major health crisis right after her birth. And we thought we were gonna lose her, and we were in the ICU. And we set up her room, you know, with the idea that she most likely was gonna leave her body. And I remember so many of her nurses would come into our room on their breaks because they said it was such a beautiful feeling to be in that room with Radhika, with Prabhupada singing in the background, with Namamrita running around with Radha Kund water in a spray bottle, spraying everybody. It was just something that they really appreciated. And a number of them said that they hoped that we were there when they passed away so that we could take care of them. So definitely the connection is a major thing, and I resonate with that. So thanks for pointing that out.
Sure. I hope that you and your generation and future generations don't make the mistake that we made. I think the biggest mistake of the first generation devotees was that we were more preoccupied with posing ourselves as great devotees and forgot to be warm-blooded human beings. We forgot what it meant to be personalists, you know, and to reveal our hearts and to really feel sympathy and compassion for others. So I'm seeing that the new generations are doing a lot better, and that's very encouraging.
Can I share my story? When we bought this house, we bought from a lady who used to own a cat in here. Because cats, when they are growing up, they know the territory, and then so she didn't want to take the cat with her. It will be a total shock. So she left the cat behind and let somebody else take care of the cat So it became a neighborhood cat, but that cat will always sleep somewhere near our house. And I am not a cat person or a dog person or any animal person. I mean, I'm not going and killing them, but nonetheless, I don't want any dogs coming near me. Anyway, this cat was passing away one day. It was about to die. We all knew it was about to die. And I had such a difficult time going and picking up the cat. So I went and told my neighbor who had several cats and dogs. So I went and asked her, could you please help me so that this cat can listen to Prabhupada chanting at the end of its life? So she said, yes. She didn't know what she was doing. I just told her, I am afraid of cats. So she went and picked up the cat like a baby, brought it to our garage, and then she went to her house. She's just our neighbor. So she went to her house, brought all the things like bed and things like that, whatever the cat needed from her house to our garage. And we made a small bed for the cat. And then I put a fan and a laptop next to the cat with Prabhupada chanting on. And this lady does not have any idea what I'm doing. What happened was this lady and husband and lady, they both were there. Their daughter is a vet, and they know animals usually die very cruelly, violently, because they are just out there and all the bugs starts biting them. The cat had a lot of bugs, big flies and things like that. So when we brought the cat inside the garage and with the fan and everything, we are fanning with whatever we could find, and all the bugs are gone, and cat is so peaceful listening to Prabhupada. And they were also coming and sitting there. And at that time I had to go somewhere. And when I come back, I see they are sitting in the garage fanning the cat and listening to Prabhupada chanting the entire time, like 6-7 hours, the chanting is going on.
Oh, amazing.
In the meantime, they are like asking me, what is this? What is this? Initially, I was not sure how long this will go on. So we were trying to chant, and then how long can I be there? So I just brought the laptop. And when we were chanting, she was asking, what is that you are chanting? And my son brings the Bhagavad Gita book, opens the book and shows this is the mantra. This will make the cat very peaceful and things like that. And she's trying to chant. She cannot pronounce any words. So she said in the night also I was chanting, things like that. So they got the book. They were asking, can I get the book with me? So I'm thinking this cat actually distributed a Bhagavad Gita book. It passed away. But the cat had, because of that, they are so nice to us, saying, we have never seen people like this. I'm like thinking, really? I don't even want to touch the cat and you are telling me. But anyway, and then I gave them some Ganga water to put in the cat's mouth. So they did all that, but I wouldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. They did anything and everything I said they were doing. Even today, if I go and ask, if I say, take some prasadam or something, they are very willing to take it. They're so happily accepting everything, whatever. And so much so that when my first son graduated from high school, they went around, looked for a small deity of Krishna. They gifted my son with the deity of Krishna.
Gosh. Yeah, that's a wonderful stories. I think we need to overcome our fear of being different. I think sometimes people who have taken to devotional life think that somehow they're now separated from humanity, that we're a people apart, a community apart. When the real message, I believe, is that now we finally have a place within humanity. Now we finally have a role to play in the larger world. And by extending ourselves like that, we will find the points of communion with others, and then we'll be fulfilling the mission that Srila Prabhupada brought to the West. So thank you for those lovely stories. And my thanks to all of you for your interest and for your hospitality. And what can I say? Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. I'm honored to have spent this time with you this evening. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Thank you. It was really wonderful. And we have to thank Namamrita for arranging all this. And thank you, Namamrita.
You're doing it all, Mother Vaishnavi.
I'm not doing anything. I'm just sitting here.
This was my one time helping a little bit.
Maybe we can hear, you can choose the topic and you can come back to our, so that we can get more of your association.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Krishna. Srila Prabhupada.
Jai. Haribol.
Haribol.
Miss Sarah, if you're still here, can you hear me?
Sorry, I thought I closed it. I'm leaving now.
Okay. No, I just wanted you to take down that email. I wrote it down there in case.
Oh, I didn't.